position of all of the tank metas to be able to run in with, and that means the coordination always has to be on point. It's the most punishing if one piece is ever so slightly out of place.
And is the one piece real, Moxie? That's the real question I want to know today. But yeah, you're right, 100%. I think these the Reinhardt composition requires an incredible amount of coordination, especially for that Mei that we saw yesterday, right? Obviously, Muse being a fellow, fantastic Mei player, not here anymore. But in this matchup between, Naga and then W Maymon, really that Mei has also been crucial to setting up the Reinhardt. And get a little nice look at the Penguins as you guys in chat can make your predictions for the matchup. I think we know where you guys are going to lead to today. However, Oblivione, we'll see if they can put up a fight versus Team Peps.
Yeah, speaking about that Mei as well, it's not just about isolating the other targets, it's also making sure that the Mei and the Reinhardt are working together, because we have seen a couple of times Mei's blocking their own Rein shatters or boosting them up at ever so slightly the wrong moment, which does have a domino impact on the rest of the fight. Team Peps not going to be fielding the Bastion to rip through the shields, instead Hybrid's going to be running out on that Hanzo. We'll see how effective it is. The Dragon Strike can be extremely punishing in zoning and controlling a lot of these chokes, but in terms of overall burst damage, Cookie is going to have a head.
Yeah, now they both go towards that point side. The charge already comes through from Doge. Unfortunately, just meets an ice block as well. And now they come around that backside. Cookie, who came through that main, did take out Zerion, so no more Baptiste. And usually it just means a team fight loss already. However, countercharge did come through for Krondop to get W Maymon, but the heals are still here for Oblivione. And Team Peps, without Xerion, they're going to have to reset.
Yeah, this is what we were talking about, right? That difference between the Hanzo and the Bastion in terms of pressuring out that shield. Cookie's just pumping out damage, whereas Hybrid only gets to really rely on things like the Storm Arrow to be able to break that Rein shield. And as a result, Zerion gets left a little bit too vulnerable. Moving into this next fight, however, Team Peps aren't going to be looking for a flank route. They're just putting pressure on the point, forcing EXO to walk into them and pushing up in with that Mei wall. It does isolate both the Bastion and the Reinhardt, but there's no follow-through. And unfortunately for them, it takes a little bit too long. They back out, giving up the space and allowing EXO to immediately bite back.
Yeah, a lot of this composition relies heavily on Hybrid getting those picks. Krondop does trade back W Maymon, but he does find the spawn doors yet again. In Moxie, like you mentioned, that this Hanzo is just not finding value at the moment versus Cookie and Bastion.
I mean, he's doing damage. He is ahead in terms of ultimate charge from Cookie. But again, the Hanzo really needs to be able to charge up. He's looking for that flank angle at the moment. The recon is there, just trying to give away a lot of information on where EXO are playing from. Because Krondop is going to have Shatter first of all. They're trying to force EXO once again into walking into them. Maywall does come through, but it's a little bit too late. They again don't really get to isolate one singular target because it's on the point itself. It's too wide. And as a result, Peps are having to invest even more in the fight that should have started favorably.
Yeah, but look at this window at the same time from Zerion on the opposite side. Just gives that entire point, up for Oblivione. Nowhere to hide. And now Team Peps rotate that point. Oblivione, did they even really want to win that fight? Because now, look, they've saved ultimates. This
is the thing, right? Because Peps didn't really get to use that Blizzard to do anything other than zone EXO off of the point and allow the flip to come through, they had to use both the Dragon and the Blizzard and the Amplification Matrix. That's going to eat into the setup that they have to be able to hold on to this point, because they don't really get that choke control that is there when they know that Cookie is going to come out and try to push through. The Reinhardt touch comes out from Doge, doesn't connect, and they actually use it to punish the fact that he'd gone in deep and get separated from his team.
Yeah, but a nice block from Doge after the freeze comes through now onto Krondop, and that Mei ultimate has been impactful throughout the entire Pro-Am. 80% now on the board for Oblivione. Entering last fight territory is Team Peps. Without any ultimates, it's going to be hard to do this.
Yeah, it was the ultimate disadvantage that unfortunately bit Team Peps in that engagement. Even though it starts off perfectly, they're able to push Doge away from his team, but we just see the strike comes through from Cookie, the Blizzard from Maymon, the Shatter even from Doge, and all that just means that EXO gets that space, that breathing room to be able to better set up that Reinhardt. Calyx has to actually touch that point to keep it in play, and they are able to use that wall to make sure that the reinforcements don't come through in time. Roundup gets walled off, isn't able to help his Lucio. Lucio goes down, and from there it's just clean up and choke.
And this is just Oblivione throughout the tournament, really kind of progressively, Moxie. I mean, we've discussed this where it feels like they're such a new team, right? I mean, that's because they are. And because of that, it's not that they don't lose matches necessarily because of any mechanical difference. It's just simply them you know, getting that synergy and building that teamwork. And it seems like they're doing so, right? Already up 1 round on Peps. If they can come through on this second round and take the victory here, that'd be a great start for them leading into the next few maps.
Yeah, I'm really interested as well to see how this dynamic of both teams now running the Hanzo instead of one running that Bastion, having a little bit of edge in terms of burst damage, is going to play out. There is a little bit more focus on the high ground, and you really do want to be able to have those flank angles. And as a result, both teams are going to be very evenly footed when it comes to being able to burst targets down. Beautiful boop actually comes onto Krandop, who got caught out by that Mei wall, pushed into the members of EXO and forcing out the immortality field very early on.
And now Cookie just trying to find those back lines. However, now they've caught out Naga on this left side. Maywell, the rest of the team, but Kelix is the one to get picked. And Cookie with the fall through shot into Naga. Perfect placed arrows. Lands in towards the face of Naga. And now Team Peps without their team. They're going to get out of there. Back up once more. But they do build that window a bit.
There we go.
Hey, just wanted a fast respawn, you know?
Yeah, that is the fast reset. Hopefully we're going to get to see a little bit of it in the replay. At the moment, we can just admire Cookie shots on that Hanzo. That's the additional pressure that we were talking about, right? Everyone else is fighting around those Rhine shields, and Cookie on that Hanzo just gets to take a little bit of an off angle and find the gap in between, threading the needle and picking up two, immediately denying Peps an advantage in the frontline fight, as Doge already has Shatter, by the way.
Krandop doesn't have his, so Doge just going to walk on through. Now tries to shatter something, but he only finds the wall. The lamp comes through to keep the team alive as well, but level 1 Crook with the window is pumping in that damage. But look at the top side. Zerion trades back level 1 Crook and is on the high ground, just healing and dealing damage. And that gives his team that advantage that they so desperately needed to stop Oblivione's point progression.
Yeah, this is what I was talking about at the start, Dustin, where I said ever so slight avenues of miscommunication, because Doge has the Shadow, he's setting up to use it. He would have found Krandop, but he only finds his own team's Mei wall. And that is something that is immediately punished, as Team Peps now are going to have a Shadow. There's going to be a Dragon Strike to come through from Hybrid to be able to be all the follow-up necessary, especially if Crispy gets knocked down in the Rhine ultimate. He's not going to be able to hit the sound barrier.
Early Dragon Strike separates the team. Now comes out that Mei ultimate. But because Maymon was looking for it, he goes down at the same time. Cookie with the Dragon Strike finds Zerion. Krandop falls as well. So Maymon died with that Mei ultimate to allow his team that space. And now they'll come in with the fast point flip.
Yeah, it's a sacrifice you take every step of the week. That Mei Blizzard saves the team from any follow-up, any zone potential that Team Peps were able to capitalize on. If you see, Krandop wasn't even able to find the space to be able to use that Shadow because of that Blizzard. And as a result, EXO are still holding on to this point. They've got control of the high ground. This is exactly where the Mei wants to play. You can see Maymon just waiting to see whether or not they're actually going to push from that high ground or take the flank approach. And the Mei wall's going to be even higher. That's a gorgeous pin to come through from Krandop. Connects onto Doge, cancels it early to get the Reinhardt off the map and stay in the fight.
That was disgusting. What a charge from Krandop. Though they do commit that beat drop in towards that fight, they will get that point flip. 75% Peps look like they have a little bit more life in this round.
Krandop still holding on to the Shatter, but Zerion is the one that we really have to watch in this next fight. Level 1 Crook as well is going to be super close to the Amplification Matrix, and Dustin, we've already seen what happens when a Reinhardt and a Baptiste communicate and get that window up and running to the double Fire Strike follow-up.
Yep, and pause will come through for teams to try to figure out some technical issues that they are probably going through at the moment. But like you mentioned, that Fire Strike is always going to be terrifying through the window. However, you know, both of these teams, Moxie, it does feel like have been using the window a bit only for their Baptiste, surprisingly. They don't set up those Fire Strike windows right now. It feels like Krandop goes forward or Doge goes forward just to create space for that window. Which is, yeah, like you said, just, I mean, it's good to get that Fire Strike window. You can get those one-shots, but I guess teams right now are just so good at using Immortality Field to avoid that damage, to avoid the kill. And, you know, I guess when you have mechanical beasts like Zerion and like level 1 Crook that can just pump out that damage for themselves, I guess you might as well just use that that field for yourself.
I mean, I think a part of it is that we both have Meis on both of these teams at the moment, and that does mean that the Mei wall can immediately just block off the initial impact of Amplification Matrix. Another part of it is where these fights are taking place, because we're seeing the environmentals come through from both of these Reinhardts. Like, they know how to be able to cancel those charges, connect it onto the enemy Reinhardt, get him off the map, and then turn around and deal with that frontline fight when there is no tank left to anchor the enemy team. as level 1 Crook pulls away, gets that amplification matrix online just a little bit faster than Zerion, which is going to mean that Team Peps are a little bit more awkward in trying to push into this fight, at least until they've been able to isolate the Reinhardt away. There's the Ant Matrix, and Crandop is forced to actually give up that high ground and drop so he doesn't get taken down.
Well, this is perfect for Pep so far until Krondop gets caught out. The Shatter comes through, does land onto one, but the Immortality Field is there, so I'm not sure if that Shatter was completely warranted. And now, with Cookie set up, he can do whatever he wants! 3K for Cookie, fast Hanzo for him, and very quick work for Oblivione to retake this point.
Yeah, so Crandop tried to use that shadow because he knew he was in a really bad position otherwise, right? Everyone has seen that he's dropped down away from the rest of his team. Immortality Field isn't going to be able to reach him in time with the really awkward angle that it is, since unfortunately Zerion on that map has to cross into the side lane to be able to actually connect it to line of sight of the Reinhardt. He's throwing that shadow in the hopes that EXO are going to get too greedy. They're all going to try and push on the Reinhardt. They're not going to be holding up the shield. The shadow should be able to come through and buy himself the time for the peel to be able to come out from the rest of the team. That doesn't happen, however, and the Reinhardt goes down, the shadow gets used, and it doesn't find anything. And now it means that they're not going to have it to engage in this next fight. Worse for them, however, is what we were currently seeing on our pause screen, the fact that Zerion had actually just thrown in Amplification Matrix.
Yeah, and they're going to have 0 ultimates for the next fight. Just going to come up on that Hanzo and Mei ultimate soon, but they're going to have to wait and build that. And by the way, guys, for the technical pause that we have right now, Crispy's internet is a little bit crispy at the moment. It's a bit fried, isn't it? But yeah, I mean, in that situation, it was so smart, honestly, also there from Doge, right? Doge was the one to get that counter charge. Krondop intelligently dropped. I think that play was smart. Yeah. It was smart from Peps, but Oblivione caught him out before he could even escape and kind of put Krondop in that weird, panic room situation, right?
Yeah, so, here's the thing. Krondop is thinking they're going to come around this corner. I'm going to be able to shatter. If they try and use Amplification Matrix on the high ground to try and push us back and drop and catch one of us away from the rest of the team, we have the shatter to be able to try and cancel out the impact of that Amp Matrix. But again, like you said, he does make the right choice. The problem is that no one from Team Peps is really able to get back to him in time. And we sort of see a little bit of a, do we use this to be able to try and help our Reinhardt? Or do we hold on to an ultimate and then maybe try and punish the fact that EXO had grouped up on the Rhine, which meant that they would all be crossing back onto the point and all go around into that Amp Matrix? The problem is that Amp Matrix comes through after Cookie's already found a 2k, and you can see that rectangle just glowing ever so slightly on the Hanzo's left. It's going to be gone in this next fight, and unfortunately for Team Peps, they're probably not going to get it back until we see an overtime push.
No, Peps now rotating through that backside, go through the main, maybe fake it around towards that left side. The Hanzo of Hybrid still sitting in the main, just back of that point. Dragon Strike available for Cookie, but he's just looking for that one-shot potential. Now drops that Dragon Strike towards the left side. Doesn't connect on anything, but here comes that Reinhardt Doge. Very aggressive, gets Naga on the ground before the Immortality Field could really find value. Doge does get him, but he's low on the point. Hybrid with the Dragon Strike from across the map comes through, has that damage follow through from Krondop before the beat could even land of Crispy. And now Maymo's desperately trying to build that Mei ultimate, and now he has done it. Overtime ticks down. Doge across the left side, tries to find Kelix. Can Kelix play his life? No, he cannot, because Crispy is there, and now Maymo gets maximum value out of that ultimate. However, Hybrid does get level 1 Crook and is now alive on this point. The Mei ultimate from Naga is now a bit too late, and Oblivione are going to take map 1.
Yeah, unfortunately for Team Peps, they just don't have ultimates online in time, and a massive part of it is actually down to the play between Cookie and Doge. You can see in that last Dragon Strike that he cuts it through the entirety of the team, and it's all to isolate out one specific piece. That's Krondop. With Krondop out of the way from the rest of the team, there's no Reinhardt to really be able to shield that left side around the high ground, and as a result we see things like the Immortality Field having to be thrown in. Doge even is able to just freely charge through and get so much connection and cleave onto those other squishies, and then the Reinhardt is just gone because he doesn't have that sustainability. Kelix unfortunately goes down 94% to Soundfire, the sustain that Team Peps desperately needed to be able to buy themselves the time for something like a Dragon Strike or a Blizzard to come up on their side, and it just doesn't happen because the target focus comes through on the Lucio too soon.
In this map, Mox, I don't know if you agree with me, it feels like it's pretty snowbally too at times, right? It just feels like these teams, the map is so new that a lot of teams are not really fully practiced on it either just yet. And now, you know, obviously, Oblivione to come in, take that map number 1 over Team Peps, who I'm sure thought they would take this map, struggled on round number 1, then round 2 made it a bit closer. But now they're in that deficit. What map, I mean, like, what map do you go to that kind of gives you that edge over Oblivione for the next one?
It's always a tough one, right? You're always thinking, do we go for something that's a little bit more comfortable for our composition? Or do we go for something that we know is going to throw the other team for a loop? And it becomes even harder when you think about the compositions that both of these teams are running, because it's the same. It's that Rhine Rush, it's that mirror. So if you try and go for something that makes the Rhine Rush awkward, you are putting yourself at a disadvantage as well. I hope that we're going to just see King's Row come through. I think, honestly, for both of these teams, it is where they're just most at home of being able to run this Rhine Rush, because we're seeing that, like, both of them are very good and adept at running the Rhine Rush. It is just when ultimates come into question, perhaps we were seeing were at times a little bit, unfortunately, misplaced in using their ultimates. And I really hope that we are going to see an adjustment on that. If the Rhine does drop, I want them to just go, okay, this fight is over. We're going to have to just go back to our respawn point and save things, because, like, if you think about the amplification matrix, if they'd held on to it instead of trying to throw it in, so they could just either keep stalling out that point or find a couple of picks so that we didn't see EXO get to hold as aggressively as they did in the fight afterwards, they would have had an amp matrix. They could have pushed on to that point. They didn't have to go around those side lanes. And the fact that they were taking so many side angles and the rotations were so long every single time they lost a fight and had to enter back into it, aid into the percentage that they had, but also aid into the uptime of charging up those ultimates. Something that they really needed in that last fight, and they didn't have because of it.
Oh, yeah, they desperately did need that. And now, Mox, I mean, you're 100% right, going to King's Row for that next map. And everything's about timings, right? Yeah, you got to play almost, you know, perfect for both of these teams. And Oblivione, as they progress, as the tournament goes longer and as this match goes longer, I would be worried as a Team Peps fan, to be honest with you, Mox. I don't know if you agree, just simply because of the fact that, you know, Oblivione, the more time they get together, the more time they can get to synergize, the closer this match will be, the harder they'll make it for you as a Team Peps, to get that victory. And for Oblivione now onto King's Row, it feels like their Hanzo is doing a lot of work. Cookie, in general, has been amazing on Hanzo. In this dynamic, the change of the meta, Moxie, has been quite interesting to watch, where at the beginning we were seeing a lot of that Bastion, a lot of that Cassidy, which we still saw some Bastion there, but they did swap off it and go back to that Hanzo. Why do you think that is, that they've swapped from Cassidy now over to Hanzo throughout this meta?
So I've been saying it every single time we've seen the Cassidy come through, right? Cassidy doesn't have verticality. He has the roll, he does have the hyper armor when you have that Deadeye, but if you want to actually challenge that high ground and really be able to put pressure on this Reinhardt's individual angle that he can hold the shield up for, Hanzo is just such a good pick. Especially when you look at specific areas of this map to be able to defend, right? You have obviously that high ground that's super close to just being able to push the payload into that B checkpoint. You've got a lot of high ground focus when it comes to point A as well, being able to push your way up into that archway, so you have the window angle that forces a lot of those DPS and supports into a very tough spot when it comes to being able to position around that Reinhardt where they're still in line of sight to be able to heal their tank, but they're also not opening themselves up for the Hanzo. And that, I think, is going to be a big reason behind why Team Peps took us to this map, because you pointed out Cookie being a standout Hanzo. Every single time Peps have run King's Row, they've had hybrid on the Hanzo, and it's always found value.
Yeah, what an interesting dynamic, the change of the meta. And like you said, yeah, the verticality has been absolutely very important to deal with these mazes. And now coming into this map, I can't imagine that Oblivione are going to play anything but that Hanzo yet again. And Moxie, what's the win condition here now for Team Peps on this defensive side versus Oblivione, who are sure to go aggressive?
Yeah, I mean, if you're defending King's Row, like, there are obvious points of this map where you have to be able to eat into the time bank of the attacking team, especially when it comes to this Rhine Rush. You can't just allow EXO to be able to take point A on the first push. You need to be able to shave them off for at least 2 attacks.
3 minutes and 47 seconds Oblivione have to capture that first point, and they opt to run that Bastion this time. Krondop doesn't really want to fully commit around the statue, because once that Bastion goes into that turret form, he'll pump in that damage, but Krondop doing a great job just avoiding all of this pressure early. The wall came out, and then after that cooldown, he just walks around at Hybrid over the top side, just tries to look for that flank, tries to look for this Lucio, but Crispy now aware of that, and the rest of the team is aware, but it doesn't seem like Cookie is, but the heals are there, saves Cookie from certain demise, and now Hybrid has to move back across this clock tower, just continue to try to find something. Unfortunately, he's not getting the kills he so desperately needs. Meanwhile, the charge comes through on the front side. Immortality Field and Window from level 1 Crook gets rid of Krondorf, and now it's too little too late for Hybrid. The point is captured for Oblivione.
Yeah, that is unfortunate for Peps because, like, they had the angles, it's just Hybrid wasn't really able to find those shots. A lot of it was down to some really good Immortality Fields coming out from level 1 Quick, a really good Maywall as well from W Maymon. When Doge was actually isolated out and Krondorf tries to commit onto the Reinhardt, we see the counter Maywall come through and it actually walls off Krondorf from the rest of his team, forcing Peps into panic mode and allowing EXO to hit that amplification matrix. And unfortunately for Peps, they didn't have one to be able to try and counter it. They just had to eat all of that damage and disengage.
I love how Bastion is now basically like Anna with those set grenades.
The set nades, yeah.
It's so fun to see. And Team Peps' side now, Hybrid, again, taking this flank over the top side of the pub, just trying to find something, but he's going to have to find those picks. They use that window there, but it's zoned out by a fantastic May ultimate, and now the rest of the team is just crushed. There is that Bastion ultimate, but again, Immortality Field saves Cookie for a bit longer, but still finds that value. Immortality Field cannot last long enough, but Doge, with a perfectly placed Fire Strike, now means Team Peps has to back up because they lost that extra member.
Yeah, they are going to have to back up, and unfortunately they're not going to have a Blizzard or a Dragon Strike to try and stall this payload out even further. As EXO continue to push, they're going to have a sound barrier as well as that strike from Cookie to be able to buy themselves a lot of space, and as a result, Hybrid's positioning is going to have to get aggressive. He's looking to find a pick through that Reinhardt shield onto one of those supports, but they're just not letting him have the space.
Here comes that Maywall from Maymon, but at the same time, back up. Here comes that Bastion ultimate, tries to find Hybrid, forces that Immortality Field, though, for Team Peps, and now that Shatter comes through from Doge, but unfortunately whips. Krondorf still waiting to use his, knowing no Shatter is available, decides to charge in, but the counter beat comes from Oblivione. There's that Shatter, lands on a Cookie, but he's around the wall, and level 1 Crook yet again with that Immortality Field, then drops the window. Nobody can contest besides Kelix, however, he's still alive. Maywall comes out from Naga towards that backline to zone them out, but it's only him to be able to touch, and now Oblivione, they just overpower Team Peps with too many ultimates, and now we're moving to the third point.
It's that snowball potential, right? Team Peps did have a little bit of a fight win, but it wasn't a full reset onto EXO's side. So even though Team Peps had invested both the Dragon Strike and the Blizzard previously, EXO still got to keep the payload pushing because of the kills they'd found before the ultimates had even come out. Hybrid, however, is going to have a Dragon Strike now. Zone's going to have an amplification matrix. This should be the zoning that they need to be able to push EXO off, especially when it comes to displacing that Bastion. Kelix goes in for the kill, finds the pick onto the Bastion, and this should be absolutely EXO deciding to cut their losses and try and run as quickly as possible.
That's a momentum shifter if I've ever seen it. Nice job from Kelix to find that opening kill onto that Bastion. And now it gives them some time to set up here, Moxie, but 4 minutes left. I mean, that's a lot of time for EXO to change things if they need to.
Yeah, the good news for Peps, however, is that it's defending point C, and when you're running something like that Hanzo, you are looking to just try and stave EXO into another 30 seconds of waiting with an early cheeky pick coming out from those shots of Hybrid. Already it's having an impact on how EXO are actually pushing into this next fight. They're not going up main, they're trying to save Doge's shield for as long as possible, knowing that Krondorf is so close to Shatter.
Level 1 Crook doing a great job just avoiding these Hanzo arrows, by the way, from Hybrid. Can't find the shots, is him. Through the field, though, does get one kill and that May ultimate, so they commit a whole lot of ultimates here. That May ultimate and the Baptiste window there for Team Peps. Meanwhile, Oblivione, they don't use that, or they do use that May ultimate in that fight as well. So now EXO, they're going to come back into this next fight. They will have a slight advantage, but will it be enough to capitalize over Team Peps?
Yeah, those two ultimates from Peps, by the way, was all set up for Hybrid. Yes, the amp matrix from Zeren does manage to keep healing the team, but it's mostly so that Hybrid shots can be amplified and they can hold on to the Dragon Strike in case a counter shatter from Doge actually has more success on crowd controlling Peps' side. There's a Dragon Strike, and it catches Crispy away from the rest of his team. Without the Lucio, EXO have no choice but to commit into this fight. They don't have the speed to be able to disengage safely, and the amp matrix is even forced from their side to make sure that Peps don't try and push in.
Yeah, unfortunately, that window not going to find max value until now. Maybe with this Hanzo ultimate, but Hybrid, again, now coming online. This backside flank was behind them the entire time. They do find him to clean it up, but Zirion gets level 1 Crook, and now you don't have your Bastion to keep Maimon healthy here on the opposite side. Great job from Krondop there, by the way, to force that Lucio into that Dragon Strike.
Yeah, remember what we were talking about too. The Hybrid coming in with some of these really early picks. Already we've gone from 4 minutes to 2 minutes and 20 seconds. The next will have a Shatter, a Soundbar, and pretty soon a Blizzard to be able to work with. Something that's going to be online for Peps as well, as they just increase that distance, allow the team a little bit more room to be able to walk into, baiting them into walking into Hybrid shots even further.
Both beats available, both shatters as well. Naga's going to have that Mei ultimate first before Maimon, but both Mei is kind of playing patient around this cart. 2 minutes left. Now both teams, Hanzo's just poking around this top side. It's kind of prodding each other in that back line, but nobody's able to find maximum value until that Mei wall comes out on the left side to stop Naga from being able to find that value, but now he's going to come through the backside. Shatter through the cart, but it's blocked from Krondop. He kind of knew that was coming. Meanwhile, Mei ultimate separates Doge from the rest of his team. Beat Drop forced to come out and save him. Maywall to sustain. Krondop gets a huge shatter on that front line, on that cart. Counters Doge, who could not find value. Krondop, amazing shatter. 1 minute and 25 seconds now for Oblivione.
And Krondop knows that the shatter is the win condition. Exo had already used the lamp and the sound barrier to save Doge when he had to charge out of Naga's Blizzard. And as a result, we're down to final fight territory. Team Peps not allowing Exo any room to be able to set up. Dragon Strike coming in super early to disguise Krondop pushing onto that front line and catching Exo before they were ready to actually push back.
I love these plays from Team Peps. I'm not sure who is exactly calling them, but these aggressive plays are exactly what Team Peps of old and, you know, old Oblivione used to do. And now Team Peps back up. They try to give up this position. Naga around this left side with the wall does find it. However, they don't have any ultimates. Maybe they're just trying to bait out ultimates here from Oblivione, in which they do so. They get that window out. Team Peps, they want to die here to get a recontest with time left on that clock, because look where the card is. It's not in a great spot for Oblivione. They still got to push it further. It's surely going to go into overtime unless they get a pick here.
Yeah, especially because Team Peps have been able to bait level 1 Crook into using that Amp Matrix. And like you said, we're about to hit into overtime. Zeron's about to hit an Amp Matrix of his own, and Exo are not going to be able to have the time to disengage and wait it out. Zeron now has one job and one job alone: survive until that ult is ready to use.
Now comes that Dragon Strike into that backside, zones the cart, but Team Peps, they're waiting for that engagement. Still no ultimates. Now Zirion gonna get that window, and there's a Mei ultimate on the ground, so if he can keep his team nice and healthy and get that damage, it's gonna be perfect for them. Level 1 Quick does trade back Krondop, however, Doge is frozen on the cart. Zirion is there with that kill, and now no tank here for Oblivione. They're just dying one by one, and the hold comes through from Team Peps off the back of a perfectly placed window, and a nice Mei ultimate for Naga.
We said that the window could be the make or break, and it absolutely was. I'm sure we'll see it in the replay, but Zeron does manage to find that window, like you said, and he uses it to keep everyone sustained through the Blizzard that comes out from Exo's side until they can counter with a Blizzard of their own. And because everyone from Exo is in an overtime fight, they're dealing with everyone in front of them, trying to find the picks off of the Blizzard before the freeze runs out. The Baptiste absolutely free farms, gets to sustain, gets to fire so many shots as well into Doge, who goes down rapidly early. What? And as a result, Peps get to hold on.
That block, by the way, by Krondop was absolutely insane. Krondop is playing phenomenal right now, and is arguably playing one of the best Reinhardts we've ever seen. But also, Moxie, with Hybrid playing that Hanzo and Cookie, you know, not swapping towards it until the very end, you have to think maybe that Bastion pick, it was great for the first 2 points, but towards the third, they just couldn't contest with Hybrid, could they?
Yeah, especially because like the Bastion, it takes a little bit of time to be able to go like into that tank from where you are going to be doing the most amount of damage to the shields. Hybrid, literally every single time Exo loses a fight and has to reset back to their spawn, gets to just scale back up onto that high ground and once again cement himself on that perch and look for those first picks. And it was those first picks, those kills from Hybrid, that burned Exo from 4 minutes down to a good 1 minute 20 before they even saw the payload begin to move again.
Yep, and now on the defensive side, Oblivione are going to have to stop Team Peps before that, and the onus is on them because now that point didn't fully get captured out, and even if you were going to capture out in overtime, that would be better than the situation that they are in now. But Doge over to the left side, plays aggressive towards the inside of the statue, kind of caught out, but he does get the counter charge without Grondop able to react. Both immortality fuels land, and Grondop is the one to come out on top with a nice fire strike into W. Mamo, not sure if he actually used that shift cooldown, and now Cookie kind of losing that duel with the left side of Hybrid. You're down members. Fast take for Team Peps.
Yeah, Cookie tries a little bit of different positioning to what Team Peps were doing with the Hanzo. Hybrid, if you remember, was up on that high ground and trying to push onto off angles around statue. Cookie decides to actually hold a little bit closer towards main and try and find angles when the Reinhardt shield from Crownup gets pressured and he's dealing with Doge distracted. It still doesn't really find the value that they're looking for, and because he was just taking a lot of time to eat through the Maywall and the Rein shield, it's reflected in the difference in ult charge. Cookie's sitting at 30% and Hybrid's almost double.
Wow, that's crazy. Hybrid doing a great job. Naga also 70%. Like, with that May ult, it's going to be disgusting. Zerion's going to have that Baptiste window. Level 1 quick. The only one keeping Oblivione in this with that window coming up. Maywall comes through from Naga. Counter charge from both Reinhardts to get them on the ground. Naga is the one to come on top again. Maymon getting picked kind of like, you know, Samito from yesterday. Doge goes low on that front line. He's going to go down surely as well. And hopefully, you know, for Oblivione, they can regroup here because they've lost Memo twice in a row.
Hybrid has always been one of the standout DPSs in the EMEA region, and with Shockwave and Psycho missing from Pro-Am, it definitely feels like he's making a contention for that #1 DPS spot, right? His shots on the Hanzo have always been extremely influential in how a fight goes. As you can see, Doge, unfortunately, just having to try and keep that shield up for as much as possible as the Hanzo just parkours around him and still manages to find those openings. Team Peps coming into this next fight, 5 ultimates already built up for them, starting off with a Dragon Strike, zoning the team away. The Mei and the Reinhardt are already separated, and Crownup as a result gets a free shadow.
He does, but he comes back. He doesn't even try to capitalize off it. He just uses it to zone, and that was amazing play from him. Just so intelligent to come back for the rest of his team instead of to try to hunt those kills who are on the ground, because now Oblivione without the Reinhardt, they're in a very rough position here, Moxie. Grondop gets level 1 Crook, and they're rolling to this third point, just like Oblivione on their attack.
We've seen some very fast King's Row pushes with this Reinrush composition this week, Dustin, and you really can see like that momentum is one of the huge reasons why Peps decided to take us to this map, right? You win one of these fights, and if you exhaust the ultimates from the other side, you're pretty much guaranteed to just be able to keep pushing that cart. Where it gets more problematic, however, is point C. We already saw that EXO were able to push, or rather Peps were able to push EXO out of 4 minutes push all the way into overtime without even a full clear coming out from their side. EXO now get the opportunity to do the same, and if you look at the ultimates that they're holding on to, they have a Blizzard. They can use that to immediately zone Peps away and try and find that stopping bleeding position so that they can set themselves up on the high ground. Otherwise, Hybrid is just primed on that push to find a squishy before you even get the chance to walk out of spawn.
Yeah, excellent job from him just to keep putting at the pressure. Look at that body shot onto Cookie. Does get hit by EMEA Icicle, so has to give up that high ground, but is sure to reclaim it after he pushes this card a little bit because he sees side of Oblivione pushing forward. Hybrid! There he is! Another shot onto Cookie again, and really has been that standout player like you mentioned, Moxie. Comes through this top side now, finds the Baptiste. Does he commit? He's waiting for it, but I don't think he does, considering he has to use both cooldowns to try to find him. Incoming Doge without their Hanzo decides to go for this fight. May ultimate is now committed, but is zoned out. Perfect placement from Team Peps' side. Gets to avoid the entirety of that May ultimate. Now, 4 minutes and 36 seconds left, or 30 seconds left on this clock. Oblivione have nothing besides that window. Very similar situation to when Oblivione or Team Peps had Zerion's earlier, but Cookie is the one to find that early pick onto Kellex to force Team Peps backwards after a Fire Strike finds Hybrid as well.
Yeah, Maywall, unfortunately, from Naga comes in a little bit too late. The Fire Strike is still able to find the Hanzo, and EXO now get to take that same position we were seeing Peps pushing them all the way back into that spawn. Hybrid, however, is holding on to a Dragon Strike. They don't even really need to use it to zone. They can just use it to immediately cancel out the impact of Crook's amplification matrix if they want to. And you can actually see he's in position to play a little bit more defensively, drops down to help the rest of his team. Still holding onto this ultimate, hasn't invested it now, and definitely won't do it after that shot from Cookie. Opens things up. Already we've seen almost a minute burnt off of Peps' bank, and they're still going down.
Cookie's Hanzo has been phenomenal. I mean, this is really a battle between two fantastic Hanzo players in Hybrid and Cookie. And Team Peps, they still have those ultimates though, Moxie. I mean, there's a lot of time on the clock, but that can also almost be like a faulty cushion, right?
Especially because, like, with these picks that keep elongating the actual fights that Peps are able to take and not use the ultimates of their own, EXO are catching up. What started off with them only having one ultimate is now rapidly turning instead of being able to equalize. But there's the equalization! Dragon Strike from both of these players. Naga even using that Blizzard as Zerion uses Amplification Matrix to allow the follow-through damage to be lethal as EXO lose so many players in an absolute barrage of ults that Peps dumps into them. But as a result, Peps come into this next fight with 2. EXO are coming in with 3.
They'll both be back. That was the battle of the mirrors. Both Hanzos killing each other with the Dragon Strike, and then both Mays hitting icicles on each other. And now in this fight, you know, you got Cron Shatter, you got Kellex B-Drop, and on the opposite side, same thing. I mean, both teams so evenly matched besides W Maymon, who's going to have that May ultimate. Maybe they're trying to bait it out, but here comes that top side Kellex to find the Hanzo. May ultimate committed. Oh my god, Cron doesn't fully get out of it, but now he tries to shatter out of it, but at the same time, Doe shatters as well. They lost W Maymon on that push because of Hybrid, who found him on that engagement. Zerion gets level 1 Crook, and Team Peps, they look to equalize things, and it looks like they will do so, and are capturing King's Row in a very fast time, very smooth for them. Now it's a 1-1 series. Team Peps equalize it 1-1.
Hybrid, like I said, definitely making a play for the crown of top DPS in the EMEA region. He's been hitting so many impactful shots. Crowned was an absolute monster on the Reinhardt, being able to block the shatters and return with shatters of his own that had a lot more value. But Hybrid was the one who kept hitting those shots even when Pep should have been at a disadvantage. Right, look at that last fight. Krondop knows the Blizzard is there. He tries to go for the charge to be able to get out of it, but like you said, he doesn't manage to do it in time, and it forces the lamp to come through from Zerion to save the Reinhardt. Hybrid is the one who turns everything around by finding that pick, and meaning that Team Peps don't have to look for the disengagement, they don't have to try and find a reset, instead they get to immediately turn around and chunk through EXO's forces, knowing that the ultimates from the other side had already been invested prior.
Yeah, Team Peps doing a fantastic job there as a team, and like you mentioned, Hybrid doing a good job finding those picks, whereas the last map, you know, we kind of questioned him a little bit, but right, every player requires a little bit of a warm-up, I guess. You need those warm-up games to just kind of get going. I'm sure they've had a scrimmage, but, you know, playing a practice match versus another team is not the same, you know, obviously, as playing a professional match versus another team that really needs to win to get qualified for this Pro-Am.
I think another part of it as well is, remember, Antarctica is still a relatively new map. So for players who are really wanting to play off of off angles, it's definitely expected that you're going to have more success on King's Row where you are just more familiar with those off angles that you can take, right? Especially for Hanzos, like, it's so important that you know before a fight begins what position you're aiming to find yourself into halfway through a fight, what angle you're going to have to be able to try and push through that Reinhardt shield and force the backline into being really under pressure of the angles that they can cross into. Especially when we were looking at Hybrid, well, he wasn't always landing the shots, he was always putting pressure on the enemy Baptiste, and the angles that he was actually able to take, especially when we were looking at the point C push, Hybrid a lot of the time wouldn't actually go for the engagement against the BAP, rather he would use his position on that high ground to make sure that the BAP was zoned away from helping his Reinhardt, putting even more pressure on the lamp being thrown in early, and allowing Krondop to be able to have the head over the fight against Doge.
There you have it, 1-1 between Team Peps and Oblivione. We'll be going to a short break, but when we come back, we'll be back with that map number 3. Both teams fighting for their life right now to be qualified for Pro-Am to play against Overwatch League teams, so don't go anywhere. We'll be back after this short break. Welcome back to this barn burner of a series between Team Peps and Oblivione, Moxie. We just finished King's Row, now going into that third map. The pick is on Oblivione, and we're going to Junkertown.
Yeah, it definitely feels like they're trying to just make it a little bit more even for Cookie to go up against Hybrid. Because King's Row, no matter how good the Reinhardts were and the blocks on Shatters, really were impactful. It very much was down to, especially when we hit into the territory that was point C, whether Hybrid would find that first shot or whether Cookie would. And then the fight would descend, crumbling the way of the team that managed to find that Hanzo's first pick.
In Junkertown, Moxie, I think this map is it is good for Hanzo, but I think it allows some diversity in terms of playing maybe like a Widowmaker or something else, maybe even playing some more mobile compositions. But, you know, I think both these teams have kind of shown their hand. They're fine to go for that mirror. It doesn't seem like we'll see a lot of Bastion, right? I think this map, Moxie, do they play anything besides this Hanzo yet again on a map where maybe you want to play something a bit more rangy, like that Widowmaker?
I mean, I could actually see Mainman potentially going for the Echo. It would definitely make sense. Like, we have seen EXO on Junkertown actually run Maimon on the Echo and Crispy on the Mercy to be able to pocket. And something that we were talking about in between the break is obviously sort of the debate, right? This match is very important for both these teams. Whoever wins is going to qualify into that second and final spot to be able to go up against the Overwatch League teams in the Pro-Am. But waiting in the wings are Twisted Minds, who we know are going to be running that Farah and Echo from LBBD. And it is a discussion and debate of which of these teams are going to be better equipped to be able to deal with that. EXO have most likely seen that Pep struggled against that Farah and the Echo and want to take us to a map where they can put that into place and see whether or not it's going to push the team out of that comfort zone once more.
And it is that prize pool too, by the way, Moxie. It's not just playing against Pro-Am, but it's also the fact that first place will get $5,000 Rinos, or I guess, would it be euros? With euros is a little bit different, right? The exchange rate. But first place $5,000, second place $2,500 at least. So if the team that wins this one or if they win this match, they'll be secured at least $2,500. Meanwhile, third place $1,000. So there's a lot on the line here. Not only do you have to qualify against Overwatch League teams, but also you got a little bit of cash on the side, a little bit cash considerations. We're going to a short pause, by the way, real quick, guys, and we're still talking, obviously, but the match is still on a little bit of delay as the teams kind of figure out what's going on. And I'm sure they're still, I don't know if they're figuring out their composition still, Moxie. Like you said, there's some difference. They could play that Echo. They could play some of those compositions on the side of Team Peps. They're very good at it, but or on Oblivione, rather. But Moxie, do you think that would actually be the composition to run? Do you think playing that Echo is actually a good decision here when both teams, they're totally fine playing that mirror and it feels like they're pretty evenly matched?
Well, we were talking about this, about why, you know, Twisted Minds maybe still has an advantage over both of these teams, and that because we saw in King's Row, both the DPS from EXO and Team Peps were finding the most value, not on the Bastion, but on the Hanzo. Hanzo isn't hit scan, so he finds it a little bit harder to be able to deal traditionally with that Farah, with the Echo. Especially if you're trying to run things like that Baptiste. The Echo does have so much pressure using that beam when those targets are below 50%, being able to pressure Reinhardt's as well. The fact that the beam just absolutely chunks through shield super fast does put a lot more pressure again on that immortality field to be timed at the right time, especially even for the Mei. Like, you can't really use the block to be able to separate the Rein out the way that we've seen when teams are running that Bastion, because just like the Hanzo, the Echo can obviously move above it and help the Reinhardt out even afterwards.
It's a very good point. Yeah, a lot of that just avoidance of that Mei ultimate. I mean, that's why also you play Baptiste, right? Instead of maybe something like that Kariko, just simply because he could jump over it. But also, you know, leading the jumping as Baptiste. I had a bad problem with this, Moxie, where my team, when I was playing for the Atlanta Reign, were like, you should unbind the jump key, because a lot of the times when you would jump too much, right? It feels like in this meta, it's good, obviously, to jump across the Mei wall. But in other ones, right, where there's no Mei wall on the ground, if you're just spamming jump all the time, it just gives you the other team a free kill, because it's just that easy to shoot.
That's one of the best tips I can give any aspiring Ana on ladder. Immediately unbind jump key, because it does make you way too predictable, and a Widowmaker, a Hanzo, or an Ashe will see the pattern and immediately line a shot up to take you out of the board. It's
so addicting though, Mox. You know, it's like a little bit of You just keep, it's like a goldfish. You keep forgetting about it, but you're just like, oh, but spamming jump, it's so fun. You know, having it bound to mouse wheel down or something. But 16 seconds left now, guys. And Team Peps, let's see what they decide to run here. Oblivione opting to run that Cassidy, Moxie.
Yeah, opting to run the Cassie, but also still opting to run this Reinhardt with the Mei. They are going to be looking for this very early hold at spawn. And I like that Peps, they're kind of expecting it. The fact that they're running this Junkrat is going to chunk through not just the Rein shield, but the Mei wall super early. EXO don't get to try and find that wall to isolate these players out that they're looking for until now.
No, they all get out, but Cookie is there with a double tap onto Zerion. Nice job from him, and then immediately onto Hybrid as well. I mean, this is why this guy's an absolute star player. One of the best aimers that we have in Europe, if not the best, according to a lot of players. It's just his hero pool that always kind of comes into question, but a fantastic player in his own right. Nice hold, 30 seconds off the clock already.
Yeah, Cookie very much feels like the young gun that's coming in and still trying to make a name for himself. Obviously exploded onto the scene with Munich topping out Contenders A sides. Then fell a little bit quieter on B sides when he went over to SMC, but he still has that mechanical prowess. As we're seeing Hybrid on the Hanzo just push his way up onto the rooftops, making it harder for EXO to be able to find these angles to isolate Peps away from. There's the Hanzo, there's the pressure onto the Reinhardt, and Doge has to decide turn around to deal with the Hanzo and block the arrows, or allow them to just take out that front line. And unfortunately, the Hanzo finds the pick.
This is for Hybrid specifically, Moxie. It feels like he's been steadily improving throughout the entirety of his career. It just feels like he's consistently getting better and better as he plays. And now Oblivione, they want these fast team fights, don't they? They try to come in, fast towards this inside angle, but it looks like the cart's already past it. It's getting past this first corner, and now Oblivione, they want to fight right here in a perfect spot for Team Peps. The wall comes through from Naga. Both charges come through. Both Mei walls now committed. However, Maimon used both cooldowns, so he has to back out of there. Now comes that window from level 1 Crook. Zerion still hasn't built his. And Naga's got that Mei ultimate, but they opt not to use it. They just want to disengage. Now he throws it out there, but dies to a fire strike from Doge, who predicted that Naga would be there. Immortality is there for Doge, but not long enough to save his life. And now Oblivione, they're totally split. Beat Drop couldn't save them, and Team Peps, great disengage from them.
Yeah, it is the ultimate deficit, unfortunately, for EXO. The fact that Hybrid on that Hanzo was able to immediately just break EXO's concentration and focusing the members down on the frontline fight and push them into trying to disengage. As a result, Peps had more ultimates coming to that last fight, and even though they do lose Naga, the Blizzard is still there zoning EXO's position away and forcing them into Zerion's amplification matrix. Team Peps take a very fast point A and still have ultimates to be able to work into this next fight. EXO have to win this next engagement if they want to have that high ground control and any chance of not being picked up early by Hybrid.
Well, Hybrid's had some very big Dragon Strikes before as well, so that's going to be something Oblivione are watching out for at the moment. Here he's about to pop it, looking for it, but they drop actually early. Very smart by Oblivione to not wait for that Dragon Strike from Hybrid. Now decides to launch it a bit late, looking for Cookie over the top side. Beat Drop committed now from Kelix onto that low ground to keep the team healthy, but Doge is the one to get the charge actually, even through that Beat Drop from Kelix, so that's the early pick. They do have both Shatters on either side with Krondop and Doge, but Cookie chases down Krondop. Once that Mei is taken out, everything is going to fall and crumble for Team Peps, who have to regroup.
Good target focus onto Krondop, knowing that the Shadow is online for both of these Reinhardts. Maimon drops in that Blizzard, even using the wall to be able to make sure that Krondop is not going to be healed through the Mei ultimate. And EXO, as a result, have lost that control, that snowball potential that was there when they took point A super quickly. As we see Doge now taking in with that fire strike, pushing onto the members of Peps, thanks to another really nice wall coming out from Maimon, meaning that they weren't really able to face that Dragon Strike without just dropping down to the low ground and losing members in the process.
I love how impactful both of these Dragon Strikes have been. Hybrid did get picked off a little bit late there, could not hide behind that wall for too long, considering Maimon walled them off at the same time. It's surprising, isn't it, Moxie, to see Dragon Strike become such an impactful ability? Especially
because normally we see it being used to either zone or disguise a forward position push. But with the place that these teams are taking these fights in that very little alleyway up on this high ground, Dragon Strike is incredibly impactful and punishing these members if there's ever so slight communication out of place. Speaking about punishing miscommunication, Maywalls are coming through, but both of these teams not actually going to be isolated. Kelix, however, tries to get aggressive and look for an opportunity to knock EXO off of the high ground into Krondop's Shadow, and he goes down. He goes way too aggressive and gets punched for it immediately.
Yeah, Hybrid was there with the follow-up shots too, and now Oblivione, even though they did, Team Peps, even though they did lose Kelix, they do manage to capitalize there. Oblivione now With that supportal and Reinhardt Shatter, they'll be coming in. But Team Peps, you have to think, with such an advantage here on this attacking side, they could just wall off the side of Oblivione as they come in. But Oblivione decides
Dragon Strike is what you're worried about the most. There's the Sonic. They all know that Exo are behind the billboard. There's the drop. Doge moving forward does have the Shatter, but there's the Dragon Strike to immediately zone the Reinhardt out. The Shatter gets blocked by Krondop, and he still hasn't counter-shattered. Instead, it's a May Blizzard coming from Naga, as Team Peps think that they can win this with only one ult.
And they decide to commit that ultimate, the May ultimate here. They can't win it with just that ultimate because of a perfectly placed May ultimate from Mamo. Now 1 minute and 14 seconds off the clock. The recontest works out for Oblivione, and unfortunately, Team Peps might have been a little bit too scared to commit full to that fight.
That is the problem, right? By gambling on the fact that you only need to use the Dragon Strike and the Blizzard, by holding onto the Shadow in the hopes you have it for the next fight, because you're most worried about getting stopped on point C where the defense has faster respawns, you instead lose that fight and have to put yourself back into a position where the Shadow is actually going to be impactful.
Now Krondop runs around towards that cart. They try to flip it entirely, but Level 1 Cook has to deal with this Hanzo, and he could not before the lamp comes out. Hybrid takes him out mid-air. Dragon Strike comes out, but it might be too little too late because Doge is down. So is Level 1 Crook. Can't really do this without them. They're sure to fall, and they do so. Team Peps are going to move forward on the third point with 2 minutes now.
It's such a good bait from Peps to actually push that fight to the payload and force Exo to give up that position on the high ground, drop onto the cart so they can contest it, because that opens up that space for Hybrid. He finds the pick onto Crook as the BAP is rotating, and the BAP doesn't have any idea that the Hanzo is actually on the high ground that Exo had just evacuated. Now Team Peps have more time on the bank, only 1 minute and 37 seconds though. So they are going to have to try and keep this payload moving, because if it stops at any moment, they're going to have to worry about Cookie or Mayman coming in for pick before. But that's a brilliant way to start things off. 2 picks are already in Peps' favor. Krondop even gets the charge to connect onto Doge. The Reinhardt is away from the rest of the team, and this is Peps just continuing.
Now you say that the Team Pep has to worry about Maimon and Cookie, but, you know, it seems like Oblivione has to worry about Hybrid so much right now. Just consistently finding the first pick, allowing Team Peps that engage early. And, you know, when you have a Hanzo like this, you know, not a lot of team play has to be done when you could just have their Hanzo pick off every fight, can you?
And unfortunately for XO, they are going to be walking into another Dragon Strike. Cookie doesn't have one to be able to try and counter it with. Crook does have an amplification matrix if they want to zone Peps away, but Peps are going to go aggressive once again, opening up with a Dragon Strike of their own.
Window comes through from level 1 Crook, but an also counter window comes through from Team Peps. The May ultimate does throw out for Oblivione, but doesn't catch anybody. B-drop, though, was committed because of it, and Hybrid does have that high ground, but the same angle continually being used by Cookie. And on the opposite side, Maimon sitting on an off angle here. Cookie finds Naga, and now without your May, how do you win this? It's because, or it's with Hybrid picking up Cookie on the opposite side, so now you don't have a lot of that damage, but you still have that Lucio on the front line. You still have your Reinhardt, who's nice and healthy, running on a Krondop. And now Team Peps, they're gonna have to reset, but it's 12 seconds left.
Doge holding onto the Shadow as well. Crispy's about to hit Sound Barrier. All of the sustain necessary for XO to hold onto this payload with. Krondop's even coming back on the Hammond, but Hybrid goes down 81% to the Dragon Strike, and the Shadow comes through. Doesn't catch out the May because of the ice block, but it does stop anyone else from Team Peps from being able to walk through underneath. And the Dragon Strike cuts off the payload, meaning that Team Peps might just have to throw themselves onto that cart and try and keep it stalled out for as long as possible.
Perfect place beat drop though from Crispy. If that May ult got off maybe for Naga, it would have been big, but it got canceled because he died before it. Hybrid though does get Maimon. They still have people here. Toss a Dragon Strike out. It confuses things now for Oblivione. Krondop rolls back to a health pack, so he lives. He gets out scot-free. Cookie has to start popping off, has to get some damage now into this Wrecking Ball, or Kellex. Kellex needs to fall here. He does so, but Zerion gets Doge. It might be too little too late, but Cookie hits the flick shot onto Naga, and Hybrid on the opposite side decides to dash forward to take out Cookie. Zerion gets rid of Crispy as well, and against all odds, even without that May ultimate, Team Peps looks like they're for sure gonna cap out now on Junkertown after it looked so scary.
Doge just needs to go down right now. The shields are there for the Wrecking Ball. He's only going to be able to spin to win for 6 seconds, but it's enough to keep the stagger going. XO are able to touch onto the card as Sombra comes on through. The swap onto Kiriko for Crook to be able to teleport through from spawn onto the fight. But Team Peps are able to find the target focus. They find the 2 supports, and they finally push the cart through. My goodness, what a roller coaster of a fight. My goodness, what a Dragon Fight to immediately turn the tide that Hybrid is able to use. Even though the Blizzard from Naga gets cancelled, the Dragon Strike does its job. It zones XO off from being able to focus individually down the members of Peps, allowing those faster picks, the things like the Tracer, the Hammond, to be able to cycle touching that cart and keep it in play.
I mean, sadly, this a lot of that comes down to target focus too there, Moxie, where they just could not finish off any of the target members that they were in a great situation, just constantly in a 4 versus 5, and just somehow, some way, you know, Team Peps pulled it out of nowhere, pulled it out of thin air, and you know, now for Oblivione on their attacking side, they're in a weird spot now. They're gonna have to fully cap on a Junkertown to even have a chance to win this map.
Yeah, remember that this was the map that they decided to take us to. So there is reasoning behind it. I would expect a different strategy to come out from them. As speaking of different strategies, Peps going to be running hybrid, not on the Hanzo, but on the Widowmaker. Once again, it feels like we're going to have that traditional Junkertown sniper showdown. And once again, just like King's Row, it really is going to hinge on which of these DPS are going to find that first shot.
Yep, Cookie. Probably going to change up things, maybe just trying to figure out a comp to play, but like you mentioned, that composition change is happening now. Oblivione have Maimon onto that Echo that you called pre-match, Moxie. And now Hybrid, you know, has to do his Wrecking Ball. They noticed that, you know, Hybrid's going to be on that Widowmaker, so they immediately tried to hunt him down. Level 1 Cook sits in spawn. Is he going to pick early? No. Decides to run back in, get those heals, and Hybrid's out of the fight right now, by the way. He's in the middle of no man's land just to hide from Doge. There's an angry Doge who's got rabies hunting you down, trying to get you, but unfortunately cannot find that kill. Team Peps doing a great job here, Moxie, just playing their lives inside, delaying this cart and not dying.
Yeah, contesting it with the Maywall as well, so that they can just push a little bit closer to the cart and stop it from moving, as Hybrid is still not actually in this fight at the moment, so there's a lot more movement for Maimon on this Echo. He has to deal with the May, but that's about it. He still gets to chunk a lot of pressure onto the members of Team Peps when they actually move out of that side room to contest the cart eventually.
Okay, there's that first pick by Level 1 Cook, who decided to push in towards that inside angle off of the aggression from Doge and the rest of Oblivione. Doge now taken down low is going to give his supports a lot of needed healing here. They're going to build ultimates. Zeron's going to have that window. Kelly's will have beat drop, so those are a bit stronger, I would say, ultimate-wise than Oblivione's.
I was gonna say, I'm expecting the swap off the Widowmaker onto the cast immediately. Widowmaker, when you're going up against a Hammond, the fact you only have 175 health and your grapple's still on a 12-second cooldown, the Hammond's gonna be able to hunt you down relentlessly. And Team Peps need the hit scan to be able to keep this Echo in check.
Ooh, nade comes through, does not land, but they do, after the copy from Maimon, take out Zerion. High Noon in the copy against the beat drop, tries to find Naga, does get that body shot, but I mean, who cares if he killed this copy, because Maimon will still have another life, throws out the magnetic nade, just consistently pumping out that damage, although they did lose level 1 Crook, so that is a big kill to find, but they did not expect that damage to come through from Maimon. Maimon now has to use some perfect movement while Cookie commits that overclock onto the low ground. It does eventually run out. Naga just delaying this cart. They can't kill these members who are just consistently delaying the cart. Naga knows that, commits that May ultimate, and also goes into shift form to save his life. Naga can't find the follow-up kills because guess who's over that top side? It's Cookie the entire time, but guess who's still being a nuisance on the inside angle? It's Kellex in the 1v1 with Maimon, who is now caught out. Has to run to that health pack. Hybrid now comes back through. Health pack not available for him. And the skillful play from Hybrid to throw an auto-lock sticky on the Maimon, takes him out of that fight. Resurrect comes through, but Hybrid's there with the follow-through damage, who has been playing phenomenal this entire time. Nano Boost came out to Cookie, who cannot find those kills. Doge does go get the slam onto Kellex. 9 noon from Hybrid with that Suzu, by the way, who Zerion swapped over, keeps him alive. I've never seen such an impactful high noon play in my life, but somehow, some way, it looks like Oblivione are finishing up the kills, but Team Peps, they don't want to give this up, Moxie.
Cart's still contested. Remember, all the way through the entirety of that fight, Team Peps are keeping the cart contested because every single time one player goes down in that side room, another player takes their place. So as a result, EXO have not actually been able to push the cart any further at the moment. Doge trying to find that power drive, will be able to connect onto Hybrid. The follow-up is there, the Mercy giving a little bit of extra boost on the damage, be able to finally pick up that Cassidy so that Maimon has so much more room to work with. But once again, Peps just reside in that side room and still the cart hasn't moved.
This has got to be so demoralizing. Cookie does get Kellex, Maimon gets croned up, and finally they decided to push in. But that is far too much time off the clock, Moxie. Yeah. They fought the entire French Revolution there inside that damn room. 23 seconds left. Do you think Team Peps recontest?
I mean, they've got to give it an attempt, right? There's only 17 seconds left. EXO, even if they're able to push this card through, are going to have to use ultimates to be able to guarantee that they win it. especially with Naga coming in on that Tracer with the Pulse Bomb, and EXO aren't running anything that can alleviate the damage. There's the stick, it connects onto the Social mid-overclock, and Cookie's gone!
Yeah, but the Resurrect does come through from Crispy, so it's perfectly placed. Do they have the heals for him against this Tracer? Naga on Tracer has been crucial. Kelix on that front line finds a kill. Memo does have that copy in the swap, gets one, but he's down now too. And they do cap that point though. Oh my god, the entire time Oblivione did capture that point. They're registered a bit too late in my brain. And somehow Team Peps, they look like they're winning that fight, but could not stay on an objective.
I mean, they didn't win the objective, but what they have done is even the ultimate economy. In fact, they've lopsided it in their favor. Hybrid, now that the Echo isn't going to be a problem, swaps onto the Hanzo to contest Cookie so that they can both have verticality and look for those high ground angles to be able to hold, as well as use the Sonics to give their Reinhardts a better indication of where the other is going to be to set up those counter charges without revealing your position too early. Kitsune Rush comes through from Peps as they decide, okay, we're going to stop this payload even longer, as Hybrid off of the Kitsune Rush already is found 2.
Yeah, as long as you have Hybrid alive, it seems like it's always winnable. Naga with the fall through damage. Doge is still alive, though. As long as you have Orion and Bap, it might be winnable, but no. Zerion on this Kariko, by the way, a swap that we did not expect to come through, has been equally as impactful.
What's going to be impactful is the time bank. Because EXO took so long to pick up point A, they have 1 minute and 20 seconds left. They're going to have to push themselves into a fight where Peps are already at an advantage in terms of positioning, not allowing EXO to find the poke damage to build up ultimates. As the Pulse Bomb comes through and immediately they have to just use the lamp.
They did avoid it, so it wasn't really a necessary lamp, although it was a bit of a panic one. Hybrid, 70 HP, needs some healing, does get some Kariko heals, but Naga gets picked by Cookie through that field, through that window. But Hybrid, again, just been such a difference maker, finds Maimon on that top angle. Now the Baptiste tries to find some extra value. Level 1 Crook, but drops down. And with Hybrid on this top side, with nobody able to deal with him, they can't really push forward through this cart. Dragon Strike comes through from Hybrid into that health pack, so nobody could take it. Just biding time for Naga to come back in Hybrid. Clutch shot after clutch shot. Finds one, but Cookie trades it back. So they do get rid of the Baptiste. No main heals here. That's bad for Oblivione, although they do have the beat drop.
They do have the beat drop, but they don't want to commit it just yet. They know that Team Peps are going to have a beat drop of their own and a Kitsune Rush, so they need the sustain when we hit overtime, and they have no choice but to keep themselves on the payload and eat that damage. As a result, they wait for that Baptiste to return. It eats into that time bank, but it's a better setup until now. The Reinhardt gets isolated out entirely, but we're yet to see the lamp come through to save him. EXO hold on to the resources. Team Peps haven't been able to beat it out.
And this is one of the most clutch situations you could possibly be in an Overwatch player. I'm nervous for the players themselves. Doge goes for the shatter, but it gets blocked by Krondop, who then gets the beat drop with the Mail. So they commit so much to trying to get Krondop, but the Suzu came out to keep Krondop nice and healthy. And that might just be enough for Team Peps to shut them out here and now. And yes, it was. Krondop playing his life, then getting that Suzu. It's just perfectly disengaged from Team Peps, who have been doing so perfectly the entire tournament. A nice job from Team Peps gives them Junkertown, which was Oblivione's pick.
Yeah, you really can see just the impact long-term of that hold on point A. It ate into the time bank of EXO too much. Way too much, Dustin.
Yeah.
So as a result, when we rolled into B, the second that EXO lost that fight and lost that positioning on the high ground, especially when Hybrid is hitting those shots and putting so much pressure on how you have to rotate your healers in, it eats into that time bank even more, time that they just didn't really have to be able to afford. They start to have a really good push coming in with things like the Blizzard, the Sound Barrier, but again, they just don't manage to finish off the fight fast enough. They've got the Blizzard, but Team Peps have things like the Suzy to make sure that their Reinhardt even survives the engagement, and then they're just able to keep Hybrid posted up, finding those shots, looking one by one onto the members of EXO, and then moving on to the target afterwards and the target after that. EXO, on the other hand, are in full panic mode. They're in overtime, they've just dumped all of their ultimates in, they haven't been able to win it as decisively as they want. Not only do they have to keep themselves alive and win the duels against Peps, one of them at all times has to keep touching the card, and that's what Peps are really able to take advantage of.
That's where you got to clutch up, but I mean, this team is so new compared to Team Peps, who are a little bit more practiced on this team, although yeah, they are also a new team in their own right with a little bit of changes that they have with Kalos coming in and stuff. But you know, for Team Peps, right, against Oblivione, Moxie, it feels like Oblivione, like, again, just target focus has been that main issue. Do you think that's more of a thing, like a unit, as this team has been so new, or is this just an overall problem with the team where they just can't kill as fast as they possibly can? Is it not really because they're so fresh?
I think it is a lot of it down to the freshness, right? It does feel like teething issues of just the team really needing to be able to not just focus one target, but to trust each other so that when they commit to one person, they're going to be able to pick up that kill. A lot of the time, it feels like they're either over-committing ultimates or under-committing ultimates to the point that we're not really seeing them find value from both. And then you look at, you know, Team Peps, and they just have everything on read, right? Knowing that they have 17 seconds left on that point A push, that even if they're not able to commit the full hold, they're still going to chunk through the ultimate economy from the other side, thus affecting that point B push and really punishing that lack of time for EXO even further. That Naga on the Tracer is able to find that stick onto the overclocking Sojourn. Yeah, the Sojourn gets resurrected, but it still means that the ultimate is denied, and Peps push EXO into panic state even more, and we see more commitment come through so that the team can actually keep pushing through that map. And ever since we saw that point 8 push, it was just ultimate after ultimate, deficient after deficient coming out from EXO's side. Especially when Hybrid was just able to use those Dragon Strikes every single time, either pick up a person off of the ultimate or zone someone into eating an arrow.
Just disgusting work from Team Peps and the side of Hybrid, like you mentioned. And now, Moxie, going into Esperanza, that'll be the map that Oblivione opt to go to. What do they do differently on this map? Do they run, yet again, that Echo to try to mix things up versus Team Peps? It felt like the mirror was working out a bit better for them.
Yeah, they were trying to run the Echo, and I can see them still trying to run something like the Echo, given, you know, the skybox, the amount of rooftops that the Echo can hide themselves behind. But as you said, a lot of the time, like, the Echo was finding those targets, but it was only really the Echo finding the targets, and a lot of the time it was just the punishment that they weren't able to clean up the other members. Even when the Echo was able to pick off one, there was still someone, and honestly, that wasn't EXO's fault. That was just really good positioning and communication coming through from Peps to be able to trade their positions every single time one person was about to go down and make sure that you were always just keeping that cock contested in that side room, thus eating even more into the efficiency of the Echo, because if the Echo wants to find those kills, you have to flank around the exit of the room, go past that health pack, and then connect the beam onto the members inside the side room, as opposed to taking the direct exit, which is a 5-second push, as opposed to something like maybe a 10-second push, which again eats into your time.
Yeah, and what Team Peps did there is just kind of very hard. I mean, like you mentioned, it's just hard to counter, whereas like they don't really have to think too much about it. It's like we just play in this room, just die in this room, you know. It's just constant going back and forth for them. And now going in to Esperanza, they can't really do it as much, right? It's going to be a bit more of that neutral ground, so Oblivione will have that chance here now, Moxie. But, you know, do you lock that Hanzo here again for Cookie's side? I mean, he was doing well on King's Row versus Hybrid. They did lose it inevitably, though. So how do you come back in the series now if you're Oblivione?
I mean, I would say the bigger question isn't really what the DPS are running. It's more if you commit to the Rhine Rush mirror or you want to go for that Hammond. Because we did see at the very beginning, Hybrid was entirely zoned out by just Doge existing. But this time, Hybrid's going to be coming out in the Hanzo, so it's going to be a little bit harder to just threaten him with your mere existence. EXO going to be running with that Hammond, but interestingly, running the Kiriko and the Lucio. A lot of the time when we see the Hammond dive come through, it's with an Ana and a Zen, so you can have that Discord orb to connect onto the target that the Hammond is pile driving, and then the Tracer or the Sojourn can find the one clip, either with the Pulse Pistols or the Alt Railfire.
That's a pretty big commitment to change entirely your composition leading into this map. Maybe they just think in that mirror they don't have a chance versus Team Peps, so they want to mix it up here. But now onto that low ground is Team Peps. Krondop taking that space, making sure they secure this robot and get that early positioning. Maimon is just going to keep trying to pump in damage. But Moxie, they just can't keep getting on this payload. They have nothing to contest besides just looking for those picks.
Yeah, Doge is falling super low as well. Every single time that Maimon or Cookie try and get in position to be able to follow up on this Hammond. Look at it! Maimon shoots his face for 3 seconds and he immediately has to use that recall. Hybrid, however, is going to be find out. Good dive onto the Hanzo, but Zerion trades it out for the Sojourn. However, that BAP going a little bit bloodthirsty does mean that Naga is left behind for Doge to be able to chunk through. And this should be EXO taking advantage and winning this first fight. Peps trying to just bait them into taking that fight under bridge so that the mobility isn't really there for the Hammer to be able to play off of, but Kellex does go down late.
Yeah, I suppose the game plan now for Oblivione, right, is to put Team Peps in uncomfortable situations and just make them play against things similar to what they would see in this grand finals versus Twisted Minds, right? Just keep them on their toes, and maybe Team Peps won't adapt is what Exo is trying to do.
Yeah, Peps, I think we're expecting that Rhyme Rush to come through. Hybrid hadn't started off in the Cassidy to be able to counter that Hammond. Instead, he'd gone for the Hanzo to go for that shield break and additional flank angle to pressure out the backline. And right in the Rhine shield, talking about pressure, Maimon pressures the pulse bomb coming through. Zeron already having to use that lamp. And this should be Exo setting up the dive, knowing that they're going to be able to actually find a kill off of it. Calyx however gets the boot to connect onto the Hammond, and the pile drive is denied.
Yeah, Zerion went down with that window. Everybody's low now because of that, and everybody is surely going to get cleaned up here. Exo, yet again, another fight win. That's 2 in a row for them, Moxie.
Zerion's actually swapping off of that Baptiste onto the Kiriko, so he's identified he's going to be one of those main targets of focus. Should Exo try and isolate and dive down, and we are going to see Team Peps going for a swap. They're going to go for something a little bit more mobile. The Kiriko's going to have more self-sustain, so if the dive comes through, you can either Suzu or Swift Step away into safety. And Krantop's going onto the Winston so he can try and counter-dive the Sojourn, knowing that Cookie is going to have overclock. That bubble is going to have to be expertly placed to be able to mitigate the ultimate, but it comes out super early as he tries to use it to pressure the team off of the high ground and deny the Sojourn the position they're looking for. Unfortunately for them, Peps taking that and the angle a little bit too aggressively means that they've allowed Exo to take forward spawn.
Yeah, but I guess it's similar to the last meta where you just want to wait out the ultimate to now Team Peps comes through. Kondop finds Cookie early on with that dive, lands on top of that Sojourn with no cooldowns. However, he is being disengaged upon. Can he play his life? Calyx does have that beat drop, but opts not to use it until now. Okay, they did eventually force out that beat drop, so it's not the end of the world for Oblivione, who surely just want to back up here, but they're all together. They're grouping up. Mamo drops that pulse bomb, also gets Krondop, who was low in that fight. The robot is taken back control of, but without your main tank, I'm not sure how you win this fight against Oblivione, who are ready to just run on you.
Yeah, Peps trying to just bait that fight into alleyway so that Doja again just wasn't able to find that movement to be able to bowl through this team and displace that position. Does mean that they're able to force out that dive and turn Exo away, as we're going to see Peps in control of this high ground. Naga just using that Tracer, being able to blink around a lot of the threat, not allowing level 1 Croak the luxury of being able to sit in the backline and safely heal their team. Instead, a lot more pressure suddenly coming onto this Kiriko now that we've seen the swap composition come through from Peps.
All right, now we have that overclock available for Hybrid. The robot crosses the mid-ground, now 70 meters, by the way, Oblivion head. So we have to watch that for Team Peps to see if they can get to that same margin. Now Naga goes forward with that pulse bomb. Krondop popped the Primal Rage to get Crispy's beat drop out of there. Doge is going to build those Wrecking Ball mines onto that foreground. He's going to eventually use it, but that Kitsune Rush with the overclock does far too much damage. Naga lands a pulse bomb and also the kill onto Doge. And now Oblivione, they're in a rough spot where they were in the driver's seat for the entirety of the first 4 minutes.
Yeah, they were in the driving seat, but they're in the driving seat for this next fight as well. Calyx is the only one on Peps' side who's even close to an ultimate, and that's a sustained sound barrier. Boomer's still going to be able to have Pulse Bomb. Quick's going to be coming up on that rush. So for Peps, they're going to have to make the decision. Do you use sound barrier to go aggressive and try and push onto Exo before they're ready, or do you hold on to it and use it defensively to be able to counteract this rush? They decide, you know what? They're not going to counteract the rush. They're going to counteract the Kiriko. Level 1 Croak goes down.
Oh no. He thought he could teleport away in time, but did not expect Naga to be there. Pulse Bomb also connects, though, from Maimon. It was delivered in a care package to Hybrid's face from the Winston of Krondop. And although they lost level 1 Crook early, somehow Exo brings it back.
Silver linings, level 1 Crook going down does mean that they're still going to have a Kitsune Rush in this next fight as well. Hybrid thankfully wasn't denied an overclock, but Cookie is the one that we have to watch out for in this next fight. He has the overclock, and Krondop has already used the Primal Rage, so he's not going to be able to pop it to body through the Sojourn's ultimate. As a result, they're going to have to look for a dive before Exo can instigate.
1v1 between Tracers on the left side. Maimon has to play his life, but in fact, the Wrecking Ball mine does land on the Krondop. With this Kitsune Rush, he can just keep pumping in damage to Zerion. Doge on the Wrecking Ball has been doing a lot of work. Hybrid cannot find value out of the Sojourn right now against the Wrecking Ball, just displacing everybody. And like you mentioned, Moxie, they had those ultimates and just came back in for that fight win.
Maimon's going to have another Pulse Bomb. Cookie didn't have to use the overclock. Instead, they're going to be building into it in this next fight. Team Peps, they have a pulse bomb to work with, and that's going to be about it. EXO will have forward spawns as well as Doge. Just wants to keep control of this high ground. They're waiting for the full regroup to be able to come through. This high ground is perfect for pile drivers. You can already see them peeing out Crandop's location, as once again, Peps use those little small rooms to make it really hard for EXO to be able to push on these individual targets.
Crispy, nice boop to get down Krondop. Crispy does go low, though, to that disruptor shot from Hybrid, who was perfectly placed. Both overclocks available, like you mentioned. Now Maymon's going to have a pulse bomb on this low ground. Opts to just wait, play it slow, look for that backline, wait for the Suzu, wait for the shift to be used, because he can't get these elusive backline heroes as easily as you once could. But now that Suzu's committed, so is the teleport. Pulse bomb available. Overclock committed from Cookie and Hybrid on both sides, but can they find value? It's in fact Crispy, the one to do so. Shuts down Hybrid's Overclock. Now Cookie hits the headshot to Kelix, who fell back to that health pack side, and now Cookie is being dove on hard. The peel is way too good now for Oblivione. They do lose Crispy, but they keep this robot pushing forward.
Such a difference in positioning when Hybrid is around on that Sojourn. The second that he falls, Cookie goes straight for an aggressive push onto that high ground perch. And Hybrid actually bends the knee. He's onto the Sombra. He's going to look for these hacks to connect onto Doge. The Hammett does have the Wrecking Ball mined for this next fight, and that can really make it hard for Zoran's Kitsune Rush to have any oomph to it. We see early pulse bomb come through from Maymo, dive attempt from Crandop, and it's straight into the Hammond mines.
Yeah, but he pops the Primal Rage, and the Suzu was there from Zerion, so somehow they actually live through those perfectly placed Hammond mines from Doge. The robot is being pushed through main. It seems like EXO is trying to bait Team Peps into taking the robot instead of winning the team fight, but here, EXO trying to rotate across this high ground, take this topside angle. Meanwhile, they're coming back for Maymon, who has been a nuisance in the line. Instead of worrying about this robot, they're going back for him, but there's not a lot of time left on the clock. And in the meanwhile, Cookie gets Zerion while they were looking for the Tracer. Maymon is just a thorn in the side of Team Peps right now. They can't deal with him. As a unit, they decide to fall back and take another fight another day.
Kelix is going to have a Sound Barrier, but level 1 Cookie's going to have a Kitsune Rush, and that's really going to set Cookie up to supercharge into this overclock. Hybrid goes for the hack onto the Kiriko. Level 1 Crook gets one clipped. No ability to Suzu have switched up out of that one, and immediately EXO without that Kiriko don't have the ultimate to be able to hold themselves in this fight until now. Cookie comes in with a savior play. He takes Kelix out of the mix. The Sound Barrier denied for the team, and Doge, hanging strong with that Hammond's health, actually keeps EXO in this.
I mean, a really risky swap here, Moxie, to swap to this Wrecking Ball, and now on this map to make it work as well as they have been. I mean, that's just the shout out to Oblivione for doing so well. Now, like you mentioned, they have so many ultimates. 5 ultimates versus Team Peps just have that, or have 2 ultimates rather, missing 3. Zerion going to be building that Kitsune Rush. Meanwhile, Hybrid with these hacks, I mean, that's been kind of like a mini ultimate on its own. Decides to pop that EMP onto the backline. 1 kill. Can he find a second? However, he doesn't need to because Naga gets Crispy. Oblivione took a little bit too long to fight this next team fight. And now Moxie, I mean, they move 104 meters, but 50 seconds left for Team Peps to push forward and catch up.
Yeah, it's a good EMP, but EXO are just waiting on these ultimates. They don't commit Sound Barrier, they don't commit Mines, they don't even commit Kitsune Rush. So they know that the one thing that can counter everything, Crispy's going to be able to free drop the Sound Barrier, not worrying about that Sombra's ultimate. Ripping that extra armor away is going to be off of the table, and now EXO can just bank up these ultimates and power through this next fight.
Drop backs up. Kitsune Rush committed early for level 1 Cook. Doesn't want to get hacked there by Hybrid to have the potential of it getting canceled, but W Maymon on the Tracer, the menace that he is, takes down Zerion. They find Krondop off the back of a beat drop committed. Team Peps understand they're at an ult disadvantage, but they could do about 10 seconds left now. Naga, he's going to have to look for some sort of hero play pulse bomb here to equalize things. He could not find it. Crispy doing a great job rotating around him. And the meanwhile, W Maymon takes out Hybrid, takes out Naga off the backside. Wrecking Ball mines to zone. Krondop, who came back on the Wrecking Ball of his own, can't do much versus this overclocking Cookie. They come back to delay, but not much can be done. And Moxie, we will be going to a map number 5, which you wouldn't think by looking at this match this was a lower bracket finals. This feels like a dang grand finals. Oblivione takes it to a map 5.
It feels like a grand finals for both of these teams. It's as important as the grand finals. Yes, money is on the line, but for whichever team falls short today, they don't make it into that Overwatch League tournament. They don't get to go against the Overwatch League teams to prove their mettle, and that some of them are ready to move into that tier 1 spot. And you really can tell that every single one of these teams really wants to take that top spot, really wants to be able to graduate into the tournament.
I mean, yeah, I'm nervous for these players right now, Moxie. I can't imagine being in their situation, you know, having to have everything on the line right now, whereas, in NA, it's just been so easy for them in comparison. It feels like European players really have to fight tooth and nail to get anything in this scene, and they've been doing so phenomenally. Both of these teams look amazing, by the way, Oblivione and Team Peps. For that Grand Finals matchup, like you mentioned, they're going to have to go against Twisted Minds. They have to get that qualification spot and fight for that money on the line. Now, I think both of these teams, Moxie, out of what we've seen so far, obviously we're going to this map number 5, but who has that advantage coming into that matchup versus Twisted Minds? Who has the better team composition that could deal with them?
That's the interesting thing, right? Because Peps, I would say, are better at the Rhine Rush, but EXO are definitely better at running this Hammond dive. And I think if both these teams play to that strength, they are going to be able to find picks. When it comes to being able to deal with Twisted Minds, however, I would honestly have to give it to EXO just because of that Hammond dive being a lot better at being able to quickly get into the backline, which is something that we've seen Twisted Minds punish Peps for, right? Every single time it felt like Peps were trying to find a kill onto Slay in the backline, they wouldn't be able to pick the Ana off. And a lot of the time, it would just mean that there was more room for everyone else on Twisted Minds to be able to just push forward and take advantage of.
Yes.
When it comes to EXO, because Doge is running that Hammond, and a lot of the time we're seeing that follow-up come through from Cookie and Maymon, we are seeing those individual targets being spotted out, being pile-drived, and being taken down immediately. So in terms of that matchup, EXO has an advantage. In terms of this matchup, it really is an absolute knife edge because both of these teams look so damn strong.
And it depends on the map, guys. We'll be going to a short break. We need a bit of a breather after that, so come back for that map number 5, guys. See you after this short timer, all right? Welcome back to the lower bracket finals between Oblivione and Team Peps, and we're moving into that map number 5, Moxie, and this series has been exciting. It's been everything we've asked for so far because either team that qualifies right now at least secures himself $2,500, and on top of that will qualify to play against Overwatch teams in the Pro-Am. So with that in mind, Team Peps decided to pick Nepal for that map number 5, Moxie. Who do you think has the edge here right after map number 1? We talked about it off the broadcast where EXO, they were able to win that first control map. Who do you think has this edge coming into Nepal?
I think it really is going to come down to what composition both these teams try and run. I want to see EXO just move away from that Reinhardt Rush Mirror and just field this Hammond composition, because like you can run it on Nepal, right? Especially on Village and Shrine. There's a lot of movement on Sanctum as well. The Hammond gets that threat to be able to try and push players, especially if they take the fight on side lane, which opens up a lot more space on the point for your team to be able to just really push another team into an uncomfortable spot. When it comes to the Rhine Rush, Team Peps definitely had an edge over when we saw them on King's Row, and a lot of that was down to Hybrid on the Hanzo. So I'm hoping that we see a Hybrid keep on the Hanzo. My worry is that they're going to try and mind games that they're going to think that EXO are running out with that Echo, and they're going to start off with him on the Cassidy. Because I think the most punishing thing for Peps in that last map of Push was expecting EXO to come out on the Rhine Rush and losing the first fight because they didn't have a hit scan to keep the Echo in check.
No, I'm curious to see if EXO decides to run it. I mean, it depends on what they've been practiced on, right? It depends on if they're practiced on the Wrecking Ball coming into Nepal. Maybe in that last map in Esperanza, that's been their go-to composition. But, you know, we don't know what they've decided, what they've opted to stick with.
We could even see something like the Sim, right? A lot of the teams on this map in particular have decided to run that Symmetra because, one, it means that your rotations are always going to be extraordinarily clean. Something that you're going to be concerned about when there's a Rhine in play who can immediately pin you away from your team, or a Mei who can wall you off. But the fact that Sim just supercharges that primary off of these Rhine shields, very similar to things like the Hanzo and the Bastion, where you just chunk through that frontline health and allow yourself to connect to the rest of the team. However, it does look like it's going to be Peps running the Hanzo, and EXO deciding that they're going to stick with this Hammond composition, but not run the Echo. Instead, they're going to run a crossfire of a Tracer worrying the backline, and Cookie holding down the fort with pressure for that Sojourn.
What a change. And this is something that we've seen recently too, Moxie, it feels like, with this more mobile composition. Everybody talking about Winston behind the scenes, you know, with Overwatch teams wanting to play more dive. Oblivione, they look to hop on that meta train early.
Yeah, running that Hammond, there it is. Initial Symmetra teleport coming through from both these teams before swapping back to what they actually want to run. As EXO decided they're going to just go on to point immediately. Team Peps not actually taking that fight in side lane. They've seen that there are things like that Lucio and that Hammond. And they're going back and changing because Hybrid is having to go onto the Cassidy.
Cookie waving to the window as they can be seen. No waves back though. No love lost here for Team Peps. Meanwhile, EXO waiting for that point to unlock. Mamon's going to capture it. Team Peps is off to drop down below, but now they know where they're coming from. Can the point be contested before it flips? No, it cannot. But at the same, or yes, it can, but no. He gets booped back by Doge. He was too low, had to get somebody to drop on him, and now they're stuck inside. Cron drops low, needs those heals. Team Peps are trying to split off angles against the dive comp, get the charge on the Doge. Unfortunately, the Suzu keeps him back, refreshing his fight, but Krondop is still here to contest this point.
Hack does come on to Doge in the meantime, as Peps still haven't really been able to pick off the Hammond. However, Maimon has been spotted out, and he's now being funneled towards Hybrid on that Cassidy by that pressure coming through from Krondop. But Doge, now that the hack is gone, is still able to turn around and take out the Sombra. No one from Team Peps is actually able to move on to the point, because if they do, they're running into Cookie set up on that Sojourn on the high ground. Peps actually going back and swapping up their composition, allowing way too much time for EXO to outposition them.
This is scary now for Team Peps. I mean, it seems like they can't make those adjustments that they desperately need to versus EXO, who have made the perfect swap over to this kind of unorthodox opposition with the Wrecking Ball. They opt to go around this backside to try to find a kill. They get the hack on him, but no, doesn't fall off the map. However, level 1 Crook does get picked by Hybrid on the opposite side. Pulse Bomb comes out, and in the meanwhile, Doge is trying to get this backline, but doesn't have the follow-up damage. The window is here for Zerion to pick off Cookie, who has been phenomenal. An absolute all-star on this Baptiste. The point flips back for Team Peps, and they have some ultimates for next fight.
They will have the EMP to be able to deal with Doge as well, so Doge can't just go to the point, drop the minefield, and zone Peps off, allowing EXO to get that flip. and put into position that stagger stall that is so good for a team that is this mobile. As a result, Peps are going to have to hold on to that EMP until those Maples come through. They only really have this deadline to be able to instigate any of these engagements. Choke control coming out from ground up so that the Fire Strike can connect onto a majority of members. It is going to be a free shatter, given that there's no shield on the ground. But what's almost not free is the position. Ground up, thank lucky stars that you have knockback reduction as a tank. Stay standing.
Get away from the edge, my brother. You're giving me a dang heart attack. Hybrid does get Doge on that backline after that hack. So that's already 1 up now for Team Peps, who are putting themselves in a pretty great position on this defensive hold.
Yeah, they really do just get to stagger out these fights, given that they have those choke controls. EXO are running a very mobile composition, but they only get to be truly mobile when they're out of these chokes, and it's something that Peps are actually punishing. They're keeping them all traffic jammed up inside these very small rooms, so that Crandop is able to just land those fire strikes, apply even more pressure, as Doge actually has to go for a very long flank angle to try to put even more pressure on the backline, freeing that Casti's attention. The Deadeye isn't there to stop Peps from just walking out.
No, but they use that beat drop to stop that Wrecking Ball ultimate. The Mind's Maimon barely blinks out with that Kitsune Rush cooldown increase or decrease to avoid that. Hybrid now has to back up, but that was a good zone. High Noon from 80% now. Crispy has that beat drop. Maimon drops that Pulse Bomb and it lands onto a lamp from Zerion, which is perfectly placed. Meanwhile, that allows Naga on the point to get Crispy. Kwandov taking a ton of damage, but not going down. Just playing his life in the corner. 22 HP, now down to 0. Finally gets picked, but Hybrid trades back Doge. So no tanks on the field. 94%. Hybrid hits the shot through the window before it disappears. Can anybody even touch for Oblivione? They drop that beat drop, but it's a little bit too late. Cookie can't really get enough kills here. Level 1 Crook does trade out Hybrid on that backside, but Krondop is back with the shatter to delay this point. Doge now here. Let's see if Team Peps can get these final blows on the point. The Suzu lands, and it doesn't save Level 1 Crook before that charge comes out. Crispy does trade back Zerion, but Peps are actually the ones to come out for that first round.
Yeah, Suzu from Quick was actually used in anticipation of a charge coming out from Crowned Up to connect onto Doge. As a result, he sees the cooldown exhausted and goes straight for the Kiriko, not the Hammond. And we don't even need to have the Shadow to come through for Peps to be able to finalize control of that point. It looks a little bit dicey, especially for Crispy. But thankfully, he was able to regain the wall riding abilities before the Sombra hack sent him spiraling to his death. And honestly, for Team Peps, it was just them needing to win one fight. It was a gamble, the fact that they went back, they gave away that first point control and positioning from EXO to be able to make sure that it wasn't just a straight fight loss, and Ultimate Economy wasn't entirely stacked against them. They only needed one fight from there to be able to collapse onto EXO and keep them stuffed up in choke, that the mobility composition doesn't find the space to fully get breathing. As we now head over towards Shrine, not a lot of environmental knockback potential here, but EXO still running this Hammond composition, knowing if they get into that back line, it's going to be a lot harder for Peps to keep this Reinhardt standing.
Wrecking Ball now trying to displace that inside core unit of Team Peps, but they're sticking together, and Hybrid is just absolute on fire now with these headshots, just constantly disrupting Maimon, who has to blink back or recall into a right click from Naga, who is also hitting those shots. Cookie now the top side low, does not have any heals. Level 1 Cook decides to teleport to him, but guess who's annoying him from the low ground? It's Hybrid. Finds that final blow. Now Level 1 Crook is dead, and Team Peps have found some great ground to work with.
Yeah, running that Mei as well, making it even harder for Doge to be able to play around on that Hammond. Right here, right now, we're seeing the composition swap come through. There's EXO, no, they can't push on to this point. They can't really push into this team when that Mei can just block off the Hammond's mobility. And we're even seeing Cookie go onto that Bastion, provide even more pressure on the backline on that Reinhardt shield. As Team Peps pull themselves a little bit far back, make sure that everyone has natural covering. They've anticipated the change to come through, and as a result, that Bap is going to be nice and safe and out of line of sight of that Bastion to be able to save the Reinhardt with a really good place lamp.
Immortality Field keeps Trondop in it, but Level 1 Crook goes down on the opposite side, so it's a 1-for-1 trade. Meanwhile, Hybrid yet again with the kill onto Crispy. Kelix is there with the follow-through damage, and Team Peps are dismantling Oblivion at the last second. 50% on the board now for them. They're halfway to that victory.
Again, it's that positioning to come through from Peps. Crondop does go down, yes, but the supports, and most importantly, Hybrid, doesn't. So now they're going to have a Deadeye to zone out when EXO starts to try and make their move. EXO, again, have to take a longer rotation, wait for their cooldowns to be back online, even try and bait this wall to come through from Naga before they're even able to touch on to this point. All that's doing is allow Peps more percentage.
Now there's that window dropped already, and that hybrid damage has been crucial. Now Doge comes towards that pine. His shield goes down incredibly low. In fact, he loses it. So now they push forward that May ultimate, and perfect cycling of ultimates. They use that high noon off the back of it, and now 82% EXO. I don't know how they win this.
Yeah, especially because Peps have just been making these fights so one-sided. Yep. Krondup's waiting. He's 5% off his shatter. He's going to see if he can actually catch EXO before they can even touch onto the card.
No.
He uses it to actually counter charge onto Doge. And the shatter is going to be there. So too is the sign barrier from Peps. We're about to hit 99%. Maymon on the Tracer is tapping on to the point to keep it in play. But that's going to be it. The charge even from Krandup connects, but he cancels it to be able to push the Tracer into a fire strike. And Peps stamp their seal on the pole. They take the series 3-2 and continue into a rematch against Twisted Minds, who await them in the upper bracket.
Good way to end it for Team Peps, right? I mean, fantastic job from them to close it out the series. I was a little worried for them on the previous round, but then to come in to that map and actually do what they do best, which is just slowly make those adjustments. Don't panic. Get those. By the way, Kellogg's fantastic move from him, and just make those plays, make those winning plays that you absolutely need to do to get the series win. And unfortunately for Oblivion, they will be out of the tournament and will not be qualified for the Pro-Am. However, on the opposite side, now Team Peps, they've locked that spot. Now, what's on the line is money.
Yeah, what's on the line is money, but not that, just that. It's a grudge match. Peps, remember, was sent down to the lower bracket, that really stressful place, by Twisted Minds, by the Echo and Faro composition. And Hybrid just really feeling at home on this Cassidy. Honestly goes to show that Peps have made some serious adjustments, and that this time around they might actually be able to better deal with that pharmacy composition if they continue to run this traditional hit scan, as opposed to maybe leaning on the Bastion composition.
And it might end up working out for Team Peps, and hopefully we get to see them in that grand finals bring their A game, and we'll have a talk with them before that match, guys, so don't go anywhere. We have an interview with one of the victors from Team Peps. I'm sure a lot of you are excited for it, some of you Team Peps fans, so don't go